Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Opening series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're carrying on our look at the Budapest together with Torch version 2 and version 3. So we've had a little bit of a look at my general thoughts about the Budapest and also I guess some creative ways to breathe life into some of the duller positions you can get from it. But I wanted to also show, well, what is Black really looking for when playing the Budapest? Well, I think it looks very much like this game, and I think understanding the factors that made this game possible, that helps explain why engines choose the system against the Budapest that they do. That certainly is not an obvious one. So let's have a little look. This is really for the Black players amongst you. So knight g4, and now the old classical line, which is knight f3. And what this does, this gives Black the opportunity to play bishop c5, hitting f2. It means that White plays e3, and then Black plays knight c6. And, White doesn't have bishop f4 to defend the e5 pawn anymore. Certainly when I was a professional, there were a lot of games that went something like this. So bishop e2, knight e5, White takes on e5, can delay that, but can also do it immediately. Knight to c3, castles, rook e8, and now the move b3. And actually, the position looks incredibly normal in actual fact. It looks a bit like a 1c4, 1e5 English, in fact. White's got a small, stable advantage because of the c-pawn restricting Black's d-pawn. The only thing that might occur to you is that because of the exchange of that white knight on e5, Black does have access to kingside squares such as h4, with moves like queen h4, that are normally out of bounds at this stage. And, Black's next idea was devised by I.M. Dolphy Dreamer back in 1968, 1969, thanks to Moskalenko for that fact. And he plays on that factor, that slight airiness of the white kingside in dramatic fashion. So a5, very natural move, just to stop a later b4, also gives this bishop a retreat square. Bishop b2, and now rook a6. So this is it. This rook is aiming for g6, almost likely h6, more commonly h6, in order to combine with queen h4 against the pawn on h2, which lacks the protection of White's king's knight. So what does White actually have here? What does White try to do? Well, one of the main things that White can do is to try and knock back the Black pieces. You've got this bishop of c5 and the knight on e5 sort of hanging around, vaguely menacingly looking at the white king side. So one key idea for White is to hit those. They're a bit sort of hanging, slightly loose, and to just try and push them back. Because then, if Black actually gets his queen and rook into play, well, if they're not supported by some extra minor pieces, then, the chances are that it won't be quite as powerful. So one idea here is to play the move queen d5. And in our game here, bishop a7 was played. So the engines actually prefer bishop f8 in this position. They think that's a better move. But, bishop a7 is the really natural attacking move. Especially if you've played rook a6, so you can put the bishop behind it, because that bishop is attacking the pawn on e3. So if White wants to play a move like f4 to try and stake a bit of kingside space, drive away the knight on e5, then that bishop is in great shape, just pointing towards the white king there. So rook ad1 was played in our game, but the engines, you can really see how concrete they are, and they really demonstrate the wisdom of what I've said, which is that the key thing is to restrict those floating minor pieces, the bishop on c5 and the knight on e5, and the engines do that very concretely. Not with a generally good move, rook d1, but by playing c5, hitting this rook and also shutting out this bishop. Rook g6, that's the main move, and then f4. And, in two moves, you're just shutting out the bishop on a7 and trying to kick away the knight on e5. Now, of course, this is quite risky for white. You're loosening. I mean, you're playing this move c5, but it's with a queen on d5, which could be attacked by all sorts of black pieces. But black isn't fantastically developed either, so white's got some decent chances there. And after knight g4, then the engines were even looking at playing the move f5 as next. Bishop g4 was also reasonable. This was also an idea here, and knight b5, hitting the bishop and trying to force it to go back to b8, where it's really passive. And if you go queen c6, of course the engines have got that covered. Queen d1. And the bishop on a7 and the rook on g4 are hit. Actually, it carries on really, because after d5, knight a7, bishop f5, the knight on a7 is trapped. But plenty of draws between torch and stockfish there. f5 is possible. Rook g5 and then bishop g4, h3, and the same idea with knight b5 here. Yeah, it's all really, it's incredibly sharp, incredibly dangerous. But you see how concrete the engines actually are, and really trying to fight against those minor pieces. So this move rook d1 is, yeah, it's a good general developing move, but it's not really going to do the business. Rook g6 was played in our game. The engines prefer rook h6, threatening queen h4. When they want to play the move g3 in actual fact, and try and give the king a little bit of company there with the queen on g2. But it is dangerous. I mean, d6 threatens bishop h3, so white has to go h4, and it's feeling very loose indeed. Rook g6 was the move played in the game, and king h1 was played. G3 again is the engine's favorite move, just to be able to bring the queen back to g2, because the point is, the queen's going to get chased away with stuff like c6, for example, and you'd rather come back to the king's side rather than just have to move here and have to watch what's happening. But king h1 was played. c6, the engines prefer rook h6. Seems to the fact that the king is on h1 and can't possibly run away, that seems to make things even better. But c6 is a decent move as well. And now queen d2, and then this is basically curtains. Queen e4 is the only engine way that they see to try and survive. I mean, actually, after rook h6, you're playing queen f4 and sort of trying to keep your queen there to stop anyone from doing anything. I mean, very, very hard for a human to deal to make this work, really. I mean, after bishop b8, it feels like anything could happen, but the engines think you can just about maybe have some chances of holding it, although quite a few games are being lost there. But after queen d2, queen to h4, it's very, very serious now. I mean, we've got rook h6 coming in, and when you go h3, I'll go d5 and bishop h3. So how did the game finish? It went f4, rook h6, h3, queen g3, nicely linking up with all our stuff. Queen e1 was played. The engine best move was to play bishop h5. You can imagine, but then knight e4, just trying to kick the black queen back. But queen e1 was played. That's a normal human move. And now we just get our typical Budapest attack. I mean, anything can happen here, right? You could throw in bishop takes e3 check, rook f2, and then go rook e6. Wouldn't do any harm. Now, this is the game Skembris against Ljoki in Varachka Banya, 1989. Black played bishop e6, or rook e6 rather, bishop h5 to stop the rook coming to g6, but we just take there. F takes e6, rook g6 check, and the game ended very quickly. Queen g2 check, and white resigned, because after king f4 we've got queen g4 mate. I mean, that of course is exactly what black is aiming for, and I think there's just a couple of very important points to point out there. We'll have a look at that in more detail in the future, but first of all, the fact that you exchange off a white knight and you give the black queen access to h4, and also that the pawn in h2 is no longer defended. That's one part of Black's ability to create a kingside attack, and of course, very nice with a5, rook a6 to h6. But you could also imagine it with rook e8 to e6 and h6 as well. So plenty of opportunities there. The other thing that's very dangerous are these floating minor pieces on c5 and e5. The bishop attacking e3, so making f4 much less tempting, and the knight, always ready to go to g4 and also getting control of the f3 square and stopping anything going there. So you would think really that we saw the engine at the last moment putting the brakes on and shutting off the the bishop with c5 and kicking away the black knight with f4. But yeah, you would think, of course, that there were some ways of maybe doing this a bit earlier and in a bit more comfortable fashion for white. And that's what we're going to have a look at in the subsequent videos. Hope you're enjoying this look at the Budapest. Give a like, subscribe to the channel if you do, and hopefully see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.